The mahogany conference table stretched between us like a battlefield, its polished surface reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights of the law firm's meeting room. Across from me sat Marcus, my ex-husband, flanked by his expensive attorneys in their tailored suits. His fingers drummed impatiently against the leather portfolio in front of him, the same nervous tick I'd once found endearing during our 12 years of marriage. Now it just irritated me. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone that had slowly eroded my self-worth over the years. "Let's not drag this out unnecessarily. You know you're not entitled to half of everything. The prenup clearly states." "The prenup that you had me sign 3 days before our wedding?" I interrupted, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. "The one you presented to me when all the vendors were paid, guests had their flights booked, and you knew I'd sign anything to avoid the humiliation of calling it off?" His jaw tightened. Even now, 2 years after he'd literally had me escorted from our home by security guards, while our neighbors watched from their windows, Marcus couldn't stand being challenged. Especially not by me, the woman he'd dismissed as just a housewife when he'd served me with divorce papers. "That prenup is ironclad," his lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Victoria Chen, interjected. Mrs. Patterson agreed to waive her rights to marital property in exchange for a modest settlement. I almost laughed at the word modest. $50,000 after 12 years of marriage, 12 years of supporting Marcus's career while sacrificing my own, 12 years of hosting his colleagues and clients, managing his household, and playing the perfect corporate wife. $50,000 while he walked away with our multi-million-dollar home, his investment portfolio, and the consulting firm I'd helped him build from the ground up. "That was before I discovered the affair," I said quietly. The room fell silent. Marcus's face flushed red, and I could see his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his water glass. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight widening of her eyes. "The what now?" my attorney, James Rodriguez, asked. We'd discussed strategy, but I hadn't shared this particular detail with him yet. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. 2 years ago, when Marcus had me removed from our home, I was devastated, humiliated. I'd spent my entire adult life as his wife, and suddenly I was homeless, essentially penniless, with no career to fall back on. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle in the room. But Marcus made one crucial mistake. His eyes darted to the folder in my hands, and I saw fear flicker across his features. He forgot that I had a key to his office. The night after Marcus had me escorted from our home, I'd driven to his consulting firm in a haze of grief and rage. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted to collect a few personal items I'd left there over the years. But when I walked into his office, I found something far more valuable than the small succulent plant I'd given him for his birthday, or the photo of us from our honeymoon in Tuscany. I found his computer still logged in. "For someone who advises Fortune 500 companies on cybersecurity," I continued, enjoying the way Marcus's face grew paler with each word, "you really should have been more careful about your digital footprint." Over the next 6 months, while I'd rebuilt my life from nothing, sleeping on my sister's couch, working 3 part-time jobs, slowly saving money, I'd also been busy. I'd used my English literature degree and the research skills that Marcus had always dismissed as useless to conduct the most thorough investigation of my life. I'd traced every suspicious transaction, every unexplained business trip, every late-night client meeting. I'd cross-referenced credit card statements with hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, and airline tickets. I'd created spreadsheets that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy, and I'd discovered that Marcus's affair with his business partner, Diana Reeves, hadn't just been personal, it had been profitable. "Let's talk about Meridian Solutions," I said, opening the folder and spreading its contents across the table. Bank statements, contracts, email printouts, and financial records created a paper mosaic of betrayal and fraud. Marcus's lead attorney leaned forward, studying the documents with growing alarm. What exactly are you alleging here? I'm alleging that while Marcus was married to me, he and Diana established Meridian Solutions as a shell company to funnel contracts away from Patterson Consulting, the firm that I'm legally entitled to half of as his spouse. They've been doing this for 4 years, systematically moving their most lucrative clients to the new company while leaving Patterson Consulting with just enough business to avoid suspicion. I pulled out a highlighted contract. Here's Patterson Consulting's agreement with Techno Global Industries, a 3-year, $2.8 million contract. But look at this. I placed another document beside it. 6 months later, Techno Global mysteriously terminated their contract with Patterson, citing strategic realignment, only to immediately sign an identical contract with Meridian Solutions, at a 20% markup, I might add. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus's second attorney, a nervous-looking man who'd barely spoken, was frantically taking notes. Victoria Chen's poker face was beginning to crack. "This is all circumstantial," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" I smiled, pulling out another set of documents. "Because I also have copies of internal emails between Marcus and Diana discussing their exit strategy." Should I read this one aloud? It's from Diana to Marcus, dated 18 months ago. "The Patterson transition is going smoother than expected. M will never suspect anything. She's too busy playing housewife to notice the real business happening. Once the divorce is final and you're free of that dead weight, we can make Meridian our primary focus." Marcus lunged forward, his face twisted with rage. "You had no right to access my private communications. This is theft." "Actually," James interjected smoothly, "under California marital property laws, Mrs. Patterson had every right to access information about assets acquired during the marriage, and if these allegations prove true, Meridian Solutions would constitute a marital asset hidden from disclosure." I wasn't finished. Over the past 2 years, while Marcus thought I was wallowing in defeat, I'd been systematically documenting every aspect of his deception. I'd enrolled in night classes for paralegal certification, learning the legal system from the inside out. I'd networked with other divorced women, learning from their mistakes and victories. I'd transformed myself from the compliant wife he'd discarded into something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. "But the real masterstroke," I continued, "was when I reached out to your other clients. You see, Marcus, when you spend 12 years hosting dinner parties and charity galas, you get to know a lot of people, important people, people who remember favors and appreciate loyalty." His face went white. "What did you do?" I pulled out a tablet and scrolled through my emails. Let's see. I had lunch with Margaret Thornfield from Apex Industries last month. Lovely woman. She was very interested to learn about Meridian Solutions and how their consulting fees compared to what she was paying Patterson. Then there was coffee with Robert Chen from Dynasty Manufacturing. No relation to your attorney, I believe. He had some fascinating insights about market rates and competitive bidding. Marcus's hands were shaking now. "Sarah, you don't understand the complexity of—" "Oh, but I do." I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to enjoy the moment I'd been planning for 2 years. "I understand that 6 of Patterson Consulting's current clients have already contacted me to discuss consulting irregularities. I understand that 3 of them are considering legal action for breach of fiduciary duty. And I understand that the IRS tends to take a very dim view of shell companies designed to evade tax obligations." Victoria Chen was furiously typing on her phone, probably researching damage control strategies. The nervous attorney had given up taking notes and was simply staring at the growing pile of evidence on the table. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and measured. First, we're going to revisit that prenup. I have documentation proving that Marcus misrepresented his assets and income when we signed it, which renders it null and void. Second, as a 50% owner of Patterson Consulting, I'm entitled to 50% of all assets, including those illegally diverted to Meridian Solutions. I paused, savoring the look of defeat creeping across Marcus's face. Third, I continued, we're going to discuss the house. The beautiful 5-bedroom colonial in Westfield Heights that Marcus claimed was purchased entirely with premarital assets. Funny thing about mortgage records, they're public information. And according to the county recorder's office, the down payment for that house came from a joint account funded by the sale of my grandmother's jewelry collection. Jewelry I inherited before our marriage, but liquidated during our marriage to help launch Patterson Consulting. Marcus's head was in his hands now. Sarah, please, we can work something out. Diana and I, it's over. It's been over for months. We can... Oh, it's definitely over, I agreed. Because Diana's already been served with papers. Seems the SEC is very interested in her trading patterns, especially the way Meridian Solutions stock purchases seem to coincide with insider information about their consulting clients' upcoming mergers and acquisitions. That was the final blow. Marcus looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before: complete and utter defeat. For 12 years, he'd controlled every aspect of our relationship. He'd made all the financial decisions, all the social decisions, all the life decisions. He'd convinced me that I was lucky to have him, that I'd never survive without him, that I was nothing more than an accessory to his success. But sitting across from him now, watching his carefully constructed world crumble around him, I realized something profound. I wasn't the same woman he'd discarded 2 years ago. The humiliation of being escorted from my own home had forged me into something harder, sharper, more determined than I'd ever been as his wife. My offer is simple, I said, straightening the documents in front of me. Full disclosure of all assets, including those held by Meridian Solutions. Equal division of all marital property, including the house, and a public apology for the fraudulent concealment of assets during our divorce proceedings. And if I refuse? Marcus asked weakly. I smiled, and for the first time in our entire relationship, he flinched at the expression on my face. Then we go to trial, and I present all of this evidence in open court, where it becomes part of the public record. Your clients will learn exactly how you've been billing them. The IRS will learn about your creative accounting methods, and your professional reputation will be destroyed completely, not just damaged. Victoria Chen leaned over to whisper urgently in Marcus's ear. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could guess. Cut your losses. Take the deal. Minimize the damage. After several minutes of hushed conversation, Marcus looked up at me with eyes that held something I'd never seen there before. Respect. Not love, not affection, but genuine respect for an opponent who had outmaneuvered him completely. I accept your terms, he said quietly. 6 months later, I stood in the foyer of my newly reclaimed home, directing the movers as they brought in furniture for my home office. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago, and I was officially the owner of Patterson Consulting, or rather, Patterson Thornfield Consulting, as I'd renamed it after bringing Margaret Thornfield on as a partner. The business was thriving. It turned out that Marcus's former clients were more than happy to work with someone who prioritized transparency and ethical practices over maximum profit extraction. Several of them had even referred new clients, impressed by my meticulous attention to detail and the research skills Marcus had once mocked. Diana Reeves was facing securities fraud charges and had been forced to surrender her assets to cover the fines and legal fees. Meridian Solutions had been dissolved, its assets returned to their rightful owners. Marcus had managed to avoid criminal charges, but his reputation in the consulting world was effectively finished. Last I heard, he was working for a mid-level firm in Denver, making a fraction of his former salary. As for me, I was no longer the woman who had been too intimidated to question a prenup or too trusting to notice her husband's affair. I'd discovered that I had a talent for business strategy and investigation that had been dormant during my years as a corporate wife. More importantly, I'd learned that I was far stronger and more capable than I'd ever imagined. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I opened the door to find a delivery man holding a large bouquet of roses. "Sarah Patterson?" he asked. "Actually," I said, accepting the flowers with a smile. "It's Sarah Thornfield now." I took back my maiden name. The card attached to the roses was from my attorney, James Rodriguez. "Congratulations on your new beginning," it read. "Though I have to say, I've never seen anyone prepare for a negotiation quite like you did. You should consider law school." I laughed, thinking of the paralegal certification I'd completed and the LSAT study guides already sitting on my desk upstairs. Maybe James was right. Maybe it was time for another transformation. After all, I'd learned something valuable over the past 2 years. The best revenge isn't just getting even, it's becoming so much more than your opponent ever imagined you could be. Marcus had thrown away a loyal wife and loving partner, thinking he could discard me like an outdated piece of furniture. Instead, he'd created his most formidable adversary. And now, standing in the home he'd tried to steal from me, running the business he'd tried to hide from me, I realized that his betrayal had been the greatest gift he could have given me. It had forced me to discover who I really was when stripped of everything I thought defined me. Was Sarah Thornfield, entrepreneur, strategist, and survivor, and I was just getting started.